Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all staying safe during this time. My name is Deanna Fenton, Program Manager here at the Alliance, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's program on DCDD heart recovery. Now, before we go ahead and get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to review. As always, to ensure an optimal visual and audio experience, it's highly recommended that you access our webinars using the Chrome browser. If you're already using Chrome and experience any audio issues, we do recommend reconnecting to the webinar using the phone number that was provided in your confirmation email. Now, to anyone joining us for the very first time today, please take note of the chat feature that's located in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. This chat will be used to pose your questions to our presenters, so if you have any questions that come up during the course of the webinar, please feel free to submit them at any time. Once the presentation has concluded, we'll go ahead and transition into our Q&A discussion, where our presenters will address as many of your questions as time allows. Now, for anyone interested in our upcoming webinars, please note registration is currently open for our next Get Connected webinar on the cultural perspectives, African Americans, and organ donation. Be sure to tune in for that on April 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Registration is also open for our next Transplant webinar, which will be on the obesity epidemic. That's coming your way on April 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern. For more information on all of our upcoming webinar offerings and to ensure you have the latest information, please visit our website at organdonationalliance.org. For those of you seeking continuing education credits, as always, we are offering 1 CEP-C credit and 1 nursing contact hour for this webinar. Please note we do also offer a certificate of attendance for anyone seeking CEs that are not available. Everyone joining us today is eligible to claim either of these credits or certificates. Prior to receiving your certificate, you will be asked to complete a brief online evaluation that will allow you the opportunity to provide us with your valuable feedback. If you're listening in a group, please be sure to get the evaluation email from your group lead. As a friendly reminder, you'll have 30 calendar days to complete your evaluations and claim your credit. Now, at this point in time, I'd like to go ahead and get the program started by introducing our moderator, Matt Wingler, Clinical Resource Lead at Lifeline of Ohio. Matt, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today, and at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much, Deanna. And first, I want to start off just thanking everyone in these unprecedented times for taking time out of your day to attend this webinar and continue to fulfill the missions of your organization and grow the opportunities for donation and transplantation. So our first speaker today is going to be Andrew Mullins. I just want to welcome Andrew. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Lifeline of Ohio in Columbus. Andrew has more than 20 years experience in organ, eye, and tissue donation and transplantation. He has a bachelor's in mortuary science, an MBA, and grad certificate in healthcare management and leadership. And he has a personal drive for donation and was personally touched after his grandfather received a heart in 1987, which has continued to drive his dedication throughout his career. Our next speaker will be Dr. Friedman, Amy Friedman. And Dr. Friedman obtained her undergrad from Princeton University, her medical and general surgery training from SUNY HSC at Downstate, and her transplant surgery training from University of Pennsylvania, and now serves as the Chief Medical Officer and EVP of Live On New York. So welcome, Dr. Amy Friedman. And our final speaker is going to be Jessica Demchak, and she is the Assistant Director of Clinical and Transplant Center Relations at Live On New York. And Jessica is responsible for building relationships with centers, studying and sharing data to improve acceptance and transplantation of all organs. So again, I want to welcome everyone that's in attendance, and especially our speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules to facilitate this educational opportunity. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for the kind introduction, and thanks to everyone for joining the call today. I'm going to share our journey on the advancements in DCD, reflecting on the first DCD heart donor that took place in the United States. And this was the first, let me clarify, first adult heart donor in the United States. So a little bit about Lifeline of Ohio's service area. We have 37 counties in Ohio, 2 counties in West Virginia, with 78 hospitals. We cover 2 transplant centers, which is the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, and Nationwide Children's, which is the Pediatric Transplant Center. We have 3.4 million people in our service area, and we facilitate the organ, eye, and tissue donation process, including birth tissue. We've seen substantial growth over the years to join the organization in 2017. And if we go back and look at the growth that we've seen, 2015 and 16, you can see the green bar there are the total number of donors. The blue are brain dead donors. And you can see we had 91 and 93 in 15 and 16 and progressed from 124 all the way up to 142 donors ending in 2019, which is a 52% increase in the number of organ donors in the last several years. This is a continual journey we're on to ensure we're honoring the donation decision and maximizing the number of organs that are recovered and transplanted. When you look at, in late 2017, we began a laser focus on the DCD process and noticed a significant opportunity for us to increase DCD donors. And we are hearing in our environment, and we continue to hear, that families were not waiting like they used to when grave prognosis was given by the physician. They were making this decision sooner to withdraw. And we started to see from 2018 to 19 a slight decrease in the number of eligible deaths in our service area. And so you can see through that laser focus that we put into place late in 17, we started to see the impact immediately in 2018 with 107 DCD approaches and ending in 2019 with 129. And as of 2 days ago, we've already had 48 DCD approaches for the year. Of note, in 2019, we actually had 19 donors that we started as DCD that converted to brain death. And so I feel like that's very telling that this is about timing and the timing involved in the process. So when you look at our actual DCD donors, you can see fairly stagnant from 15, 16, and 17. And then with that focus, we had 28 DCD donors in 2018, 38 in 2019. And as of the 29th of this month, we have had 15 DCD donors making up 42% of our total donors. In 2019, DCD was 24% of our total donors. So enough about our DCD journey, and now let me talk about the main reason I'm here today. And this is about our hero of donation, Justice Yoder. And I want to share a little bit about Justice, and this came straight from his obituary. I found this, it still gives me goosebumps when I read it. It was written in first person, and I would like to read what's on the screen there for a second. On Monday, November the 25th, 2019, I went into sudden cardiac arrest in my home. I spent until December 1st, 2019 at the Ohio State University Medical Center. My parents knew that I loved helping other people. They knew that I would want to be an organ donor. As an organ donor, I was able to give a gift to those that would carry on a part of me. With my donation, I saved 6 lives. Isn't that amazing? I am also the first person to donate a heart of a circulatory death in the United States. So not only am I a hero, I made medical history. And in speaking with Justice's family that we're in close conversation with today, not only did his family, did Justice being an organ donor provide comfort to his family, but also knowing that he made medical history has made tremendous impact. So let me share a little bit of information about his particular case. So Justice was a registered 26-year-old male. He was admitted to an outlying hospital and transferred to a level 1 trauma center. When he got to the hospital, his family brought up donation, knowing his donation decision. We use a tool from LOPA in Louisiana, a tool they've developed that shows about 80% accuracy in predicting the likelihood of a patient expiring in a timely manner. And the local tool showed strong candidate for DCD. Going through the evaluation, we had his heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys accepted. The withdrawal occurred at 01:04, and he was pronounced 9 minutes later at 01:13. After the pronouncement, there was a 5-minute waiting period, and then an additional minute for the blood to be drawn. So the incision was at 01:19, and cross-clamp at 0-1-22, with Duke successfully transplanting the DCD heart. So the question we get asked, and I got several phone calls immediately after this happened on December the 1st, was, so what was different in this DCD process? You're going to hear in a few minutes Dr. Friedman speak about their process, which is much different than this. And the only difference in this DCD process was that additional minute of time in order for the blood to be drawn. It literally, otherwise the process was very straightforward as a DCD process. So let me speak for a moment, and there's a link below that you can reference that gives you an up-to-date on the clinical trial. This is the Transmedics OCS clinical trial. There are, actually just checked it this morning, there are currently 15 centers in the United States currently recruiting or in process for this trial. So out of the 15, there's 5 centers that are currently recruiting. They're estimating enrollment in the study as 212 participants with a start date of December the 1st this past year, and wrapping up the study by December 31st of 2021. The donor criteria is 18 to 49, warm ischemic time less than or equal to 30 minutes, and you can see how that's defined there. And there's some exclusionary criteria that you can see listed on this slide. So again, for a reference, if you want to get into weeds in the study and see what centers are involved or are currently recruiting or in the process of doing so, I encourage you to check out the clinical trial site. So there's a few takeaways before I pass to Dr. Friedman that I just wanted to share. First, it all starts with a yes. We all know this. We live and breathe this every day. Justice was a registered donor who shared his decision with his family, and it shows the power of a yes. There's also the mindset of a yes within our community of saying when we're presenting with something, we all do our best to figure it out because we're all about saving lives, and we know that it takes a yes in order for all this to happen. The other piece is power of information. So we get asked, how do we even learn about this? To tell you the truth, we kind of fell into this. We had no idea that the DCD heart recovery and transplant was even taking place or getting ready to take place. I was at a meeting the year prior where it was they were sharing the European study and the great things that were happening out of that, and we are all talking about, man, one day it'll be great when it gets to the United States. When that will be, none of us knew. But there was a lot of conversation and excitement about the possibility that one day in our lifetime, we will be able to see DCD hearts recovered and transplanted, not knowing when that would be. So how did we learn about it? The power of information comes. We had a traveler organ recovery coordinator that was in working with us, who had heard from a colleague that there were some centers that were starting to do DCD hearts. He heard Mass Gen, he heard Duke, and some other centers, and so he called our team lead that was on that day and said, hey, so this DCD, probably has a good heart. We should look at trying to allocate the DCD heart for transplant. Our team lead probably thought, what are you calling me for? We don't do DCD hearts. And he went on to share that he learned that this was starting to take place, and there's some centers that were doing so. So we ran the list, and we noticed there was 2 centers listed for a DCD heart, and we had earlier obtained the echo, showed a 67% ejection fraction, and everything looked very good on the heart. And so I want to just highlight the power of information. That's literally how we heard about this. We didn't know at the time there were several centers across the country that were OPOs that were working with their local transplant centers to try to get this off the ground, anywhere between 3 months to a year of time. So this was in the works for quite some time. Our community wasn't having any dialogue about this, and so we literally fell into it. We also had the why wouldn't we try attitude. When we were presented with, it's a can-do attitude. What can we do to facilitate this? What can we do to make this happen? Let's not paralyze ourselves by thinking, well, what's the hospital going to do here? What are they going to think? Do we have to do this to ethics? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? Let's communicate in real time. Let's be transparent on what's going to take place. And let's give it the why wouldn't we try attitude. And I feel that our team was completely on board, in the hospital and everyone, to make that happen. It obviously takes a team. I want to give a huge shout out to all of our team members at Lifeline of Ohio that made this possible, the entire hospital team, the transplant teams. I will assure you there was a very high level of communication that was taking place pre-OR, right before the actual operating room procedure and everything. Everything was very high-level communication because there was a lot of people involved. There were a lot of people that wanted to be involved and that weren't able to. And so we had to make sure that everyone was aware of what was going on. And then ultimately lives saved. We all know this. Out of the 6 organs that were recovered, five lives that were saved. So we all talk about the ripple effect. And thanks to justice, a ripple has been created that will impact generations to come. Speaking of a ripple, what was the media impact that we saw through this? We saw 185 stories, and this was a couple of months ago this slide was from. 185 stories with the highest volume in Georgia, California, New York, Wisconsin, Texas, with 519 million potential reach. So this had a lot of momentum, and obviously there are several of you that are probably on this call that were also have been involved with DCD Hearts as well since, and I know that this reach continues to grow. So as I conclude, thanks to the heroic donors, their families, each of you in this new technology, it is predicted there will be a 30% increase in available hearts for transplant. So for individuals like my grandfather, who in 1987, as Matt shared, received a heart transplant. At the time, he was the oldest in Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan at 62 years of age to get a heart. Received it from a gentleman that was killed in a motorcycle accident. Unfortunately, 2 weeks post-transplant, he rejected his heart and was listed again, and unfortunately, that heart didn't come in time. So for individuals like my grandfather and others that are currently awaiting for a heart transplant today, hopefully their lives will be saved based off of this increase in this technology that is available. I thank you all for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Amy Friedman.
Wow, thank you, Andrew. And your team and the other teams that started with this Transmedics DCD Heart approach has obviously been inspirational to us. What I'd like to do is tell you about our incredibly tight collaboration and mentorship from the NYU team, which is the team with which we've worked to do the first of a different approach. To back up, and I'm not going to go exhaustively into background, just to say that in 2019 at Live On New York, which is now the epicenter of COVID land, we had 341 donors, and of those, 65 were DCD donors. Most importantly, we wanted to really focus on those DCD donors that might have been suitable for DCD Heart, and so we looked at those under 60 and found that we had 56 of them. The current DCD environment, apart from the 4 cases that we've done, is that there's typically a 1 to 2 hour wait period from extubation until declaration and procurement of organs. When cardiac arrest happens and declaration takes place, the procurement is rushed. Everybody wants to minimize the extent of warm ischemic time, and there's very limited time for additional assessments of the organs. Additionally, by that point, the donor is very clearly in a severely acidotic state because obviously perfusion has been failing until it terminally stops, and use of the liver has been pretty much limited to those patients in whom cross-clamp could really happen within 30 minutes. So the goals of this different strategy are to limit chaos, to control the pace with which the organs are assessed and recovered, to recreate homeostasis for the organs, and I'm not talking only about the heart, because by going on bypass, which we're going to discuss extensively, we recreate homeostasis for the other organs to be procured as well. We have an extension of the time frame in which those organs can be assessed, and clearly the intent is also to expand organ utilization. So the concept of normothermic regional perfusion, and this team is not the first to have done it, it has been done in Europe, but essentially the concept is to isolate the body below the brain so that the intention after declaration is to restore warm, oxygenated, blood-based perfusion in situ in that patient's body to all of the organs below the brain. Now, there are two options for doing this. One is ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, or cardiopulmonary bypass. And what I wanted to do is just compare them side by side because it is very confusing. And I have to say that even as we've been rolling this out and working with all of our surgical teams, not everybody has, apart from really the cardiothoracic surgeons, has really understood in depth what the difference is. In ECMO, you are using warm oxygenated blood, as you do in cardiopulmonary bypass, but you really can't manipulate and adjust a whole lot of factors that can be adjusted on cardiopulmonary bypass, such as treatment of lactic acidosis, administration of bicarbonate, etc. The other key point that the NYU cardiothoracic team viewed as being the real punchline as to why they preferred cardiopulmonary bypass is that on bypass, you completely control volume in the surgical field. So just as when you're doing any open heart surgery, it's obviously impossible to sew under blood, of course, in a moving heart, but also under blood, you can't see anything. So on bypass, you have a vent, and you can withdraw the blood from the heart field and look at things, and it's also much better treatment of a heart that's recovering to have it not fully distended. So cardiac volume control is feasible on cardiopulmonary bypass where it is not on ECMO. I'm sorry, I have 1 second. Sorry, that was a CMO of a hospital. I'm sorry. Additionally, Kristen, I see that you're on the call. Is there any way you could get to Chad and please just let him know that Dr. Sussman was trying to reach me? I'm sorry. Okay. So cardiopulmonary bypass, and ECMO both require the physical presence of a perfusionist, and I have to tell you that I really, in these 4 cases that I'm going to describe to you, I really came to appreciate the incredible work and art that was involved in the perfusion management of these patients. ECMO is portable, where basically cardiopulmonary bypass is not. And that makes a big difference because you can send out a team in an ambulance with an ECMO machine to a patient somewhere at a remote hospital, put them on ECMO, and then transport the patient on ECMO to your own site. That doesn't happen with cardiopulmonary bypass. So we were limited, and we collectively focused on bringing all of the first series of patients to the one center where this protocol was developed, and that was at NYU. There's also a comparative financial difference with, and this is peanuts to all of us right now, and we didn't mention, and I know it's one of the things to consider, the disposables for the Transmedics pump are much more expensive than either of these strategies here, but ECMO is about $2,000, and cardiopulmonary bypass is about $500 worth of material. Now, I want to be very clear in that what we have done is, ethically very, very challenging because of the question of brain perfusion that is not supplemented by this protocol. The NYU team worked extensively with their very well-known ethics team and their IRB team and us in advance of starting the protocol to make sure that everything was as ethically appropriate as possible. And I want to be very clear, the major point that the ethics team, the IRB, and our medical advisory board all agreed on was that as soon as the chest is opened, and we will go through the details now, the blood vessels going to the brain must be clamped off before any restoration of circulation. So let me be very clear, and this is a quote from that paper that was actually published the day before we did the first case. Who knew that it would work out that way? But permanent cessation for life-saving efforts must be achieved to assuage this concern, the ethical concern, and ligating principal vessels maintains no blood flow to the brain, which ensures natural progression to cessation of brain function. So let me be very clear on this diagram. I've put 4 green circles where the blood vessels supplying blood to the brain are. They're the 2 vertebral vessels and the 2 internal carotid arteries. Those all have to be occluded before you restore any circulation in situ in this body. And the way that was done is you can see from the aortic arch that there are 3 main vessels. And those vessels, the chest was open, and those vessels were clamped before anything else was done in each of these 4 cases. So here's how the protocol goes. You have a conventional DCD approach. The team that is interested in donation is out of the room. There's separation, avoidance of conflict of interest conventionally. With this protocol, a time frame of as long as 3 hours post-extubation until incision is tolerated. And the concept here is, well, if a patient arrests in the street and they have an extended period of downtime, they're resuscitated and you get to assess how those organs are recovering or not and how much is reversible. Well, we can do the same thing here. So since we will not be in a rush, we do not have to restrict anything to 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And so the protocol was written for as long as 3 hours. Now, all 4 of the patients that I'll tell you about did arrest within, the maximum was about 45 minutes. Okay, so step 1 is standard DCD approach, declaration, waiting the 5 minutes per the hospital protocol, and this was at NYU Hospital, and then you go. And what is done is there's first is a median sternotomy, and we all know what that is. The only thing I'll say is that it's slightly higher to make sure, towards the head so that you can make sure you can get those brain vessels occluded. You can see I've put purple marks here because that is step 1, that all 3 of those branch aortic vessels are clamped. Next step is that there are 2 cannulas rapidly inserted. One is to the aortic arch, and that is drawing blood flow out to the cardiopulmonary bypass machine. And the other cannula is put into the right atrial appendage, and that was where blood flow is returned. And then that you go, let me just go back 1 second, and I'll say that with our first case, from the time of declaration until this was achieved, being on bypass, was an additional warm time of 13 minutes. Of the 4 cases, the fastest that it was done was 9 minutes, and the longest was 13 minutes. So this can be done, but it really requires practice and anticipation of exactly what you're going to be doing. But this can be done very, very rapidly. And once you go on cardiopulmonary bypass, you can sit back and relax, because now we have restoration of warm, oxygenated, well-perfused circulation to all of the organs below the brain. Now, the organs, just like in a brain dead type protocol, can be dissected in the warm, and that's what's done. Now, the next point is, as that's being done, just like in a standard open heart procedure, you then want to see whether this heart can do okay off of bypass. So you wean off bypass and allow the heart to start on its own and see how well it beats and circulates blood to the other organs involved. And I will tell you, in all 4 cases, the heart started spontaneously within 1 to 2 minutes of weaning off of bypass. And so the protocol was written that you would try every 30 minutes while you're on bypass, every 30 minutes you would try to wean off. And in all 4 cases, we successfully weaned off bypass on the first attempt. Now, what that means is that that heart is now beating well enough to circulate warm blood to all of the organs, not only the heart. And so once the decision is made, 2 other details. The patient was reintubated, and this was all transparently handled with the family in advance. They knew all of these details. The patient was reintubated because if you don't do that, you can't wean off bypass because you have no means of providing oxygen to the blood. while you're on bypass, the machine is oxygenating the blood, but when you wean off bypass and allow the heart to function independently, the heart needs the lungs to be ventilated through the ventilator of the anesthesia machine and the endotracheal tube. So that is very important. And the other point was that a transesophageal echocardiogram probe was passed so that the heart was fully evaluated. Now, all of these hearts looked beautiful off of bypass and on echocardiogram, and 4 hearts were accepted. Now, as soon as the heart was assessed, the patient, the recipient, who was already in the room next door, had induction of anesthesia and was put to sleep, and so then we could control the timing completely. So the overall essence was that cross-clamp and initiation of cold ischemia for all organs must be within 180 minutes of declaration. I can tell you that we have now cumulatively done 4 donors, 4 DCD heart donors. It happened just beyond amazing that the very first donor was a heart-only donor. And we all know how rare they are, but it was a patient with cirrhosis and very severe kidney failure. So without this heart, this patient would not have been a donor. That heart worked right away after transplantation. After the other 3 patients, there were 3 hearts, 3 additional hearts, 3 livers, and 6 kidneys that were transplanted. Again, all of the patients did arrest within 60 minutes. And here's a really key point, that UNOS allocation was followed strictly in every sense, so that every time we ran a list, a heart DCD list, which are remarkably small at this time, and we followed allocation. And in several of the cases, there were patients listed from other centers outside of New York because we still didn't have any active New York Transmedics centers. And those centers declined the organs, and then we knew that we had the allocation going to the NYU recipients. A couple of other key points, and I know Jessica's going to go into depth in this very shortly, but here we are transferring the donor. If they're not at NYU, we transferred the living patient from the donor hospital to NYU. I want to say that this was very, very challenging for everybody to put their hands around and find, how to do this with respect for the allocation sequence, involvement and support from all of the local transplant programs as well. And so a lot of politics was intentionally done to inform and bring on board all of the liver teams, all of the heart teams, etc. I also want to make a couple of other points. The protocol, the IRB protocol, was initially written such that it would be a heart recipient only with a virgin chest, so no LVADs, etc., because we didn't want a very significant delay in the recipient end to even complicate the donor end further. But they rapidly amended that because it was so easy to do this in side-by-side rooms, and so the last case was a patient who had an LVAD, and for that reason, because they were so confident in the quality of the heart, with informed consent, they actually had the intended recipient go to sleep before withdrawal of support from the DCD candidate, and that heart recipient knew that he might wake up without having a heart transplant if the donor did not die. Just checking. I finally, before I hand it off to Jessica, want to echo everything that Andrew said about the can-do philosophy. This was not easy to do. It is very demanding on everybody as far as, going the next step and embracing something that you haven't done before. And the can-do philosophy was really, really key. So, and I want to thank everybody, our NYU, our team, I can't thank them strongly enough. Our entire Live On New York team, and actually all of the other transplant programs in New York. And I just realized finally one other point. We did have we've had several other candidates who we did not use. One we were really so excited about, but then we couldn't find a size-matched recipient, even at NYU, because people hadn't yet gotten all of their patients consented. So we lost one heart because there was no size-matched recipient. We lost another heart because this was just at the beginning of the COVID environment. We had not done a COVID test, and NYU understandably was not comfortable receiving the transfer of that patient. The last patient that we did was only 2 weeks ago and was COVID negative before transfer to NYU, so it was well in the midst of the COVID environment. And if you think that ain't hard to get to happen, I just again have to thank everybody for their incredible support in making this come to fruition. So Jessica, I think I'm going to hand it over to you to tell everybody how to make this really happen.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today, and thank you, Andrew. That was wonderful as well. So I'm speaking today a little bit more from the transplant coordinator perspective on how all of this happens from that perspective and what we had to do to make this happen, and how we had to change our practice to facilitate these things. So first I want to say what stays the same. Almost the whole process that we normally do. We have to secure authorization. We have to maintain hemodynamic stability, secure nurses for comfort measures, pronouncing physicians, continued education of all the participants, preparation of the family, which includes the transparency that we've all spoken about, and a waiting area over at NYU now that we're transferring the families over. So what has changed? So when we do our authorization process, we obviously have to include different information. We offer the families the opportunity to donate the heart first. With a yes to that offer, we then offer them a new process that can maximize their gifts if it comes to fruition, if the heart sequence falls on NYU. And with that, we offer the transfer over to NYU. If any family declines the transfer but accepts the heart, we still offer the heart out to the new DCD Heart Transmedic teams, so we don't rule the heart out based on the decline of a transfer to NYU. We also offer transportation for these families through our non-for-profit that we work with so that they can still be with their loved one during this process. We share and discuss all the wait times about the OR and how they are extended, how the period of time is up to 3 hours. We share everything from prep and how they have to be dressed and prepared to go into the OR, so these families are very well informed. We coordinate all the testing at the originating hospital to make sure that the transfer is purposeful, so echoes and casts as needed, and once those are within normal limits and good for transplantation, then the transfer process would be coordinated with the NYU's transfer team and the transplant coordinator that's on site. Transfer happens just as it would under any normal circumstance. An ACLS unit is used and transfers the patient over to NYU. Once the donor is settled, they put in all new lines at NYU. The theory on that is they want clean lines at all times, and many of our donors come in through the emergency room and have emergent lines put in, so they want to assure that every line is clean and brand new. Once this happens, the coordination with the NYU cardiothoracic team and the other teams is to set the OR time as normal and to continue to educate everyone that's participating. The beautiful thing about the transfer process is now the teams that have been doing these ORs are relatively consistent, so they know the process, but we still continue to educate every single participant that's involved in the process so they know exactly what to anticipate and coordinate the OR process. Amy Friedman, that just spoke, speaks to every accepting team during this process. The reason why we do that is because the liver team can actually decline the normothermic protocols if they feel that the liver would be sacrificed. However, most of the time they do have interest in moving forward, especially obviously in the 4 cases that we did. They did stay. They are able to abort the process at any point in time. So if a liver team still isn't sure that they want to accept under those circumstances, we still prep the case for an NYU DCD Heart, because as you all know, if the patient expiration time exceeds usually about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on your center, the liver team is out. But the DCD Heart would still be in play. So we never want to rule out the heart during that process. So everything would still move forward as if it were going to be a DCD Heart, even if the liver team didn't want to go the normothermic route. So I think that's really important, because we have seen it many of times that the liver team says the wait, this wait's too long, we're at 34 minutes, we're done, and we would have ruled out a heart had we not moved forward with this process the way it is. So the biggest change is our OR process. So here you see that there are a ton of participants, so many so that even when their voices are extremely low, there's so many people that it still sounds loud. So we found that controlling the quiet and respectful environment that we all want for our DCD donors has become much more difficult. In addition, there is a lot more equipment. We have bypass machines, perfusion machines, the bronch is there. So although the room is quite large, maneuvering all the people and then figuring out where the family is going to go and how they're going to fit in there is challenging, but clearly not impossible. And once you get everyone on the same page as where the family is going to be and maneuvering around the OR, we were able to set that up nicely. Next, we have monitoring of ischemic times. So currently, we monitor for ischemic times with a O2 saturation of 80% or a systolic less than 80. However, with most DCD hearts, including Transmedic, you have to monitor for a SAT less than 70 and a systolic blood pressure less than 50. And this is pretty standard in these trial studies, and it's an FDA regulation. So we did not stop monitoring our 80 and 80. However, we have also incorporated monitoring the SAT of 70 and the systolic of less than 50. They also are looking at that functional warm ischemic time, which that systolic less than 50, systolic blood pressure less than 50 has really shown that they can't prove so much so yet that the organ is perfusing sufficiently. Monitoring of new time windows. We have a lot of these now. We have the extubation to pronouncement time. Then we have the normal pronouncement of death, and then at NYU, the wait period is 5 minutes, and then you can have incision. Then again, we monitor the incision to ligation of the neck vessels and bypass, the time that a patient is on the bypass, assessing the heart function and the lab values. This is where the perfusionist comes in quite heavily, and I'll discuss that on the next slide. And then we also time if this process is repeated again. As Amy had mentioned, this process can go up to 180 minutes, but in all the cases that we have done so far, on the first attempt at bypass, the heart started spontaneously beating, and we did not need to repeat this scenario. But again, if the heart does not function after the original 30 minutes of bypass, bypass will resume again for another 30 minutes. Again, the donor is re-intubated after the bypass process. We want to make sure that the patient can oxygenate themselves once bypass is disconnected. In addition, some of these patients can be lung donors. So they may be bronching the patients. They may be taking ABGs to assess the lung function, as well as taking ABGs for the heart and monitoring of acidosis and things to that nature. I will say that we did find in one scenario that the patient's original PO2s were low at about 180. We did not allocate the lungs. There was no real interest moving forward with these lungs. However, during this process, the PO2s went into the high 300s and low 400s, which was really impressive and showed that there might be potential to recover organs that didn't seem recoverable during this process. And as Amy has spoken, that reoxygenating the body allows you to manipulate the organs in a way that we didn't have access to before. The heart perfusionist is there to monitor the lab values. And again, as Amy shared, they're really quite impressive. They're monitoring ABGs, they're monitoring electrolytes, looking at lactate levels, and they're manipulating all of these. If something needs to be replaced, adjusted, they're doing that all in real time, standing right there. We are also doing hepatic panel draws. Our Live-On team does that, and the reason that we're doing that independent of NYU's process, but we're trying to take note, is there any initial response to the liver from the ischemic time and things to that nature. So currently we're drawing one before the initiation of bypass, one at 30 minutes right before the reassessment of the donor, and 30 minutes after the completion of bypass. So we're just kind of doing our own internal evaluation to see if this can potentially save more lives by allowing those liver timeframes to extend the 20 to 30 minutes that we routinely see. Once the bypass is successful, we have to see if all the other teams that are in play are accepting or declining. We still have some time to reallocate should we need and prepare for cross-clamp. I will say that we've had a few liver teams that normally we know they're pretty strict on their time frames, and there's been times where it's gone over 2 to 3 minutes, maybe even 4, and they thought they were going to be out, and we encourage them to just stay the few extra minutes and take a look. And I will tell you, these livers were beautiful, and they subsequently took them. So I think as time moves on, we might be able to show them to not, that if they stay for the few extra minutes, they might be able to get a beautiful liver just by reinstituting the warm oxygenated blood. And then after this, procurement moves forward as normal. We follow all DCD protocols that we've always had. There really is nothing abnormal after that point in time. So key points that we've had, like Amy said, we had IRB approval, our medical advisory board approval. We've spoken to each hospital throughout this process. Some of them have asked why they can't do this within their hospitals, and currently we've answered that by saying, one, it's an enormous use of resources. Asking the OR teams to stay for 180 minutes now. The institution of bypass or ECMO can be taxing in hospitals, and some of our smaller hospitals don't have either of those resources. So we really didn't want to put that on hospitals at this point in time. In addition, by transferring the patients over to NYU, they're co-located, which again minimizes the ischemic time on the back end once cross-clamp does actually happen. We do transfer live DCD candidate patients, so we do have to take into consideration ME circumstances and things to that, but we address that all, again, with transparency, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and, of course, communication and transparency with everyone involved, family, hospitals, transplant centers, ME offices. We really put a lot of effort in so that everyone knows exactly what part of this we're doing. So as Amy said, we had 65 DCD donors last year, so I can't imagine what this could have done for the heart community had we been doing this last year. We've had 21 year to date. We've even made some phone calls when we've had DCD hearts. I've reached out to Duke a few times, anyone that you could possibly list that might fit the criteria of the donor we had, especially when we know we have a beautiful heart. But again, those lists are really small at this point in time, so they are hard to find. So hopefully those lists keep growing, and we can keep saving lives with that. I want to say that Amy has put in a tremendous amount of time and effort into making this study and protocol a reality for our organization. I completely agree with Andrew and Amy, why not try? Our community of OPOs and transplant centers have been a tremendous resource, and together we're all doing such amazing things. Our goals are always to ensure that we save more lives and honor the families and the donors that generously donate these gifts. So again, we're all learning these things together, so it's so wonderful that we're able to share them with you guys. We are really honored to be part of this amazing process. We're all working to increase DCD organ viability, and we're showing that we can all make it happen. So I think this is really exciting, and I'm really thankful that you guys are allowing us to share our experience with you. It's really been a tremendous effort by everyone, and we're so excited. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone stays super safe with what's going on in the world right now. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, a huge thanks to each of our speakers for putting together such an informative presentation and for, of course, sharing your respective experiences. We're now going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions, but before I turn it back to Matt to facilitate our Q&A discussion, I'd just like to remind everyone that if you do have any questions for either of our speakers, please be sure to submit them using the chat feature. As a reminder, you can find the chat located on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Also, during the Q&A time, I'm going to have this poll up. Although very unlikely, we'd like to ask those of you who may be listening in a group if you could just complete the poll and let us know how many people are participating in your respective group. That being said, I'll go ahead and turn it back to Matt. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Deanna. Again, I want to echo what Deanna said. Thank you to all of our speakers today for such incredible presentations and really demonstrating the capabilities of what one can achieve when they put their mind to it. So at this time, we've opened up the floor to questions. We have a couple Dr. Friedman has been answering off the side. I know there was one question from Kim Bowman. She said, I may have missed this, but what is the farthest distance you have transferred from? Dr. Friedman stated that 50 miles. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Friedman.
Yeah, I was going to say, so from Long Island to central Manhattan, and I guess you all probably have a guess of how long that can take with traffic. One other point about the transfer. As OPOs, we do not provide care for living patients, and obviously the DCD candidate is alive, and so therefore we cannot be the ones responsible for the transfer. And that's a really important point. So the receiving hospital, and in this case it's NYU, their critical care team communicates with the donor hospital critical care team. It's a transfer from one to the next, and the NYU critical care team has been the ones to go out and physically transport the patient. So within their institution, there has been a huge amount of education. You don't want to drop this kind of scenario onto an unsuspecting critical care physician and expect that they're going to go along, understand, not have any questions, etc. So there's been a huge amount of preparation, which brings an extended point, and I don't want to dominate this too much, but just to say that how to generalize what we've been doing with one institution is, I think, going to be our next big challenge. We've done 4 cases very successfully. Our intent was to do 5 to 10 before we got so rudely interrupted by the virus, but to make sure that everything went really smoothly and then determine how to extend this. And it's probable that we will be extending this to, a few other hospitals, probably transplant centers that have the ability to do cardiopulmonary bypass, want to do this, have participated with all the educational efforts in their own environments, etc.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Friedman. We have a question from Ronnie Reed. Do we have any information on how these recipients are doing post-transplant?
Yeah. Hey, Matt. This is Andrew. I can speak to that a little bit. I've had some conversation about on a monthly basis, communicating with Duke's transplant surgeon that did the first, and he's transplanted several recipients. I can't remember what the total number is, but all of his recipients to date, to my knowledge, and last corresponding with him, are doing well. So I can only speak to that.
And from the NYU side, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I was going to say all 4 heart recipients are doing well. I can tell you all 3 livers made bile on the table during the liver transplants. I have not heard that anybody has not been doing well. And in general, the kidneys behaved in between a live donor kidney and a DCD kidney. In other words, there was some delayed graft function, but not to the point of needing dialysis.
Excellent. Thank you. This is not a question, but a comment. It looks like one of our partners, Gary at Donor Alliance, shared that they actually did a donor on February 29th of this year. A 23-year-old female registered. The family also brought up donation. looks like they had some logistics he put in there. Had younger siblings that were tissue recipients, had 7 family members in the OR, 23 minutes from extubation to arrest, which was also a successful transplant of the heart at Duke at 1,500 miles, 5 hours of transport time perfusing the heart. So that's incredible, and that's exactly why we're doing this. So thank you for that comment, Gary. We have Jeremy Hendrickson has a question. How long does this process typically take from authorization to OR?
Honestly, it doesn't delay the process tremendously. I think Andrew would probably agree, aside from the diagnostics of an echo or a cath if they're needed. For a transmedic especially, the delays are minimal. For us, the transfer obviously plays into coordination, but we are trying to get these cases evaluated and moving forward as quickly as possible. We do take into consideration family time constraints because we have to always remember that in DCD processes, the family's the navigator. So we have to see what the family is willing to do and if they're willing to give us this extra time. We have had some delays with the last recipient that Amy spoke of that we had to do the COVID testing. Obviously, the COVID testing delays the process quite a bit, but that family was all in. And I think being that they can donate a heart really moves people. So our families have really been supportive. And I think as long as we're communicating with them really clearly, they've really been on board. So there's no definitive time from consent to OR, but the same thing, the quicker we move our testing along, the quicker the process moves along. And the transfer typically, takes a few hours. So, I mean, if you want to add on a delay, I would say 6 hours.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Kim Bowman. It says, can you speak to what the donor family experience has been so far and what are their common questions or feedback?
Yeah, I mean, so Justice's family was heavily involved in the process, including in the withdrawal that took place in the operating room that was adjacent to the room the recovery took place in. As I mentioned in my slide, the family felt a lot of comfort, not only knowing he was able to be an organ donor through his tragic death, but also knowing that he was a part of medical history that's going to impact generations to come. So they've felt a lot of comfort to that. They actually showed up a week after his death. We had our tree lighting event at our office, and his family actually showed up there. And when they got there, they're like, we don't want to talk to the media, we don't want to talk to anyone. We just want to just be here. And probably about 20 minutes into the event, they were actually up to the microphone wanting to talk and share about their son. And so I know they felt a lot of value in the donation and being able to share Justice's story across the country.
I think we've all seen it. When families are in, really, really in, they're all in.
Absolutely. Thank you. The next question is from Hannah Bifford. Do you know of any pediatric heart DCs that have been done, or have the DCD hearts just been adult?
Yeah, so it did take place in the United States. There were pediatric hearts from a DCD. I want to say somewhere between 3 or 5. I can't remember, and I know Donor Alliance was heavily involved, but that's about the extent of my knowledge on it.
I know, too, from the recipient perspective, because this is still in a trial period, they have to present this to the recipients and, in pediatric cases, their families to see if they have interest. So I think that list will grow, and I'm suspecting that sooner or later we will see pediatric cases on there. So I think sooner than later we'll start seeing that.
Great, thank you. We have another question. This one is coming from our friend Jerry Salesi at Gift of Hope. First of all, he wanted to thank the presenters today and wanted to know if you could provide any insights regarding the discussions with the family. What sort of challenges did you anticipate, and if they were encountered?
I mean, I think, when we approach our families, we have heavy conversations beforehand. You're asking families for a lot. So I think, we want to give credit to families that we know we're asking them for a lot. But I think, at least from our end, and I'm sure everyone would probably feel the same way, our family counselors or whoever's doing your approaching really tries to, be with the family, meet the family halfway, understand what the family's needs are, but, as they're proposing these things. So I think all of our approaches, we've had a few that didn't want transfers and things like that. And we've had a few that have come back and said they regret saying that they didn't want those things. So, families are in different places every single time you approach them. So I think we just have to trust that our family counselors are really assessing and supporting our families the best that they can, and we recognize that we are asking a great deal from these families.
Great, thank you. And we do have some feedback. I'm going to jump down here to Diane Bacino. She advised, yes, Donor Alliance did 5 infant hearts between 2004 and 2010 with success. Our next question comes from Kristen Backen. Are there any transplant centers that are part of this trial on the call? If so, how and when are you discussing DCD heart acceptance with the recipients? And we don't believe we have any centers, but if you could speak to that.
Well, I spoke to Dr. Schroeder. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
I've spoken to a few of the doctors from Duke, and they are, to put their patients on the DCD list, they are asking them beforehand. So even to put them on the list, they already have the family's permission.
I can tell you that the NYU team is so convinced of the high quality of the organs that they've been getting that they have gone back and worked with every single one of their waitlist patients, offering them the DCD opportunity, and I believe that almost all of their patients have agreed. But that conversation is about an hour long.
I encourage everyone, if you have a heart that you're not, that is good and you're not seeing patients on your list, I've spent, as the administrator on call, some time reaching out to centers, calling Duke, calling NYU. Is there anyone that might fit this criteria that you want to contemplate, listing on the DCD list? We haven't had success with that yet, but these lists are so small that we have that opportunity to do that until these lists start filling up.
Great, thank you. I do have an additional question, and it echoes to a comment that was made earlier. Have there been any issues with, as far as additional authorizations needed in transferring the patient? I know we say the families are all in, but from the OPO perspective or the hospital perspective, what additional authorizations have been required throughout this process, especially with the NYU experience?
So we just asked them and put, go ahead, Amy.
Sorry, we need consent for transfer, we need consent for research, and if any invasive lines are to be placed beforehand, that is not on the OPO consent form, that is a hospital consent. So all of those are separate, plus the specific IRB associated consent form.
Great, thank you. We do have a request, and I don't know if someone can address this. It says, could you please, it's from Catherine Orozco, could you please send a link or more information about the journal article that was published with regards to the DCD heart?
We don't have one yet from the NYU experience.
I think Duke did put one out, but I'm not sure of that offhand.
I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. I know there's the European models have there's been quite a bit of published papers from their experience in Europe.
I will tell you that we have a poster abstract accepted for the NYU protocol to the American Transplant Congress, but who knows what's going to happen with that yet.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions at this time from the participants or speakers?
I think we did answer Kim's question. I just want to make sure. Kim, we did test for COVID once it obviously infiltrated New York. Prior to that, we did have a few donors and COVID was not here, so those patients obviously were not tested. But currently in New York, you guys can see that we have the overwhelming need to test with COVID, for COVID.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I will turn it back over to Deanna for the conclusion.
All right. Thank you, Matt. So if there are no more questions, it looks like we can go ahead and conclude our Q&A discussion. So that being said, on behalf of the Alliance, I'd like to once again thank Andrew, Dr. Friedman, and Jessica for such a fantastic presentation on this innovative approach to DCDD heart recovery. Additionally, I'd like to extend a special thanks to Matt for, of course, coordinating today's program. So thank you, Matt, and thank you to our speakers. And to our participants, we'd like to especially thank you for your continued participation in our educational initiatives. We hope you're all staying safe, and we thank you for the life-saving work that you all do. So we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and once again, thank you for joining us.